Right, for this next session, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Andy Jones from Samsung Ads, and we're going to effectively talk about the positive role that TV manufacturers are now playing in helping to shape the growing addressable TV ecosystem. So welcome to the stage, Andy.
Thank you, Paul. Good to see everyone. Can everyone hear us okay, or do we need to shout loudly? Good.
Perfect. Right, so to kick us off, Andy, just briefly, what is it that you and your team do at Samsung Ads?
Good question. I think I know. So I lead the sales team for Samsung Ads, very much focused in the UK on agencies and advertisers. What I particularly love is the fact that everyone has heard of Samsung. Very few people know what the ads part does. So a big part of our job is actually education. It's telling people about the connected TV ecosystem and the media proposition that Samsung's developing.
Perfect. And why is everyone getting so excited at the moment about OEMs and effectively, what does OEM even mean? Because we hear that a lot in TV advertising circles.
Let's keep this as acronym light as we can. So
Excellent.
if I said to you guys, do you know what an OEM actually is?
Show of hands?
I see LG just there.
Okay,
Good.
so we probably need to explain it then, Andy.
Yeah, so original equipment manufacturer. So we are the device. And I think the best way, you obviously know what the Samsung model is, but let's just take it back a little bit, right? So just a few years ago, the TV was that dumb device in the corner that you use to access just a few channels. Now, we know that marketplace has vastly changed, but the actual device itself has changed so much. It's gone from that really dumb device to a smart ready device. So, but you needed to connect a pipe into the back of it. No one did that. They were smart ready. They weren't smart. So what people were doing, they just stuck a stick or a set-top box into the back. That is where you were accessing all your apps. It's got a lot more simple than that because the apps are now embedded into the TV. So every TV model that we've sold since 2016 is highly advanced. It's a very smart device. All of them are connected to the Wi-Fi, and all of them have apps embedded into the home screen of the TV. So we've moved on. So, and what we're seeing is far less devices, additional devices attached into our TVs. The TV is becoming that one focus point for all viewing.
Perfect. And when it comes to data, another quick show of hands, ACR data. Does everybody know what that means? Perfect. So some of you do. Clearly, we need to explain the acronyms better. Andy, ACR data, it's kind of like the secret sauce for TV manufacturers when it comes to building their advertising businesses. Can you just very briefly touch upon what that is and why it's really important for those on the buy side to try and harness that?
Cool. Let's focus a bit on data. I know it tends to be a bit of a dry subject, but the actual answer to the previous question should be what's really exciting about the OEM perspective. Advertising has changed. You've just heard briefly on the previous discussion about how viewing habits are changing. The excitement that we've got is that we've got a genuine first-hand view, agnostic view of how our TVs are being used and very differently. We're seeing the rise of app-first based content. We're seeing the demise in traditional linear, but the rise in overall viewing. There's never been a better time for the customer and the viewer because they've got more content choice than ever before. And the reason why we're excited in this space is we can see that and we can help advertisers reach those new audiences. So not only is it a lovely premium device, not only are there lots of viewing opportunities, but the data that's underpinning our media offering is transforming the way that traditional TV is bought and sold, right? So traditional media, traditional TV is bought and sold off barb, and that's a panel. What we're not trying to do, we're not trying to replace that panel in any way, shape or form. We're just additive to the panel. So we've got 9.5 million TVs in the UK that we're getting a lot of rich data, a lot of rich viewing insights, but it's all at a one-to-one level. So what are they actually watching? What services are they actually doing? And we're using that data to enrich an ad proposition. So it's probably worth just summarizing the data. So say if this was one of our screens, we would know a lot about the hardware itself. So we would know the screen size, the picture quality, We would know the internet service provider that TV is connected to. We would know the IP address that that TV is connected to, so where in the country that device is. We know that's our hardware, but we know what's connected into the back of that TV as well, so we know if it's using a streaming stick. They're not. We know if they're using a set-top box. Less are. And we know if they're using a games console, so we don't have to assume that they're a 16, 34-year-old, so they must be gamers. No. We know exactly what games console they're using and the games that they're playing. And we know that through ACR, so Automatic Content Recognition, another acronym for you. But that's essentially our version of Shazam, but instead of linking an audio to a song, we're matching the picture on the screen to known content. It's really, really important. So we know all the linear channels and programs that are being watched, the ads that have been seen, the games that are being played. But what we won't know is what's going on inside apps. So we'll know all the apps that are being launched, but what exact content they're watching inside that app, that's still relatively unknown to us. But that's purely a kind of a contractual obligation as opposed to a technical limitation, which might change over time. But crucially, I know I'm talking a lot, but crucially, that is that lovely environment with rich data that we're using that data for measurement, for insights, and for also targeting.
Perfect. So you've got a lot of first-party data that's privacy compliant, and that enables you to provide better insights to your advertisers to figure out what's really happening behind the glass. So as a few of our presenters have already alluded to today, more and more TV content is being delivered to households by the IP. It's become digitized. With that kind of transition, Andy, does that mean now that different types of advertisers are moving into television for the first time? So is that something you're seeing firsthand at Samsung Ads? Or is it still very much just traditional TV advertisers now migrated into streaming?
This is a good one because there's a number of different sort of ad formats. So we've got not to be salesy, I promise, but we've got an ad placement on our home screen. But that's more traditional display type advertising. Even though it appears on the big screen of the TV, you go to an AV, a TV buyer and an agency, they don't know what to do with it. So there's no point trying to sell that kind of environment to anyone other than a digital team or a search team, because we've become the search engine for that TV. When it comes to the traditional 30-second TV spot, actually the teams, agencies that have been most leaned in and clients are programmatic teams, because it's easier to turn on new supply and access it programmatically, whereas the traditional AV is so traded, it's so restrained by those TV trading deals that they are prioritizing those deals first as opposed to other supply.
So that's really interesting. So in theory, you enable your advertising partners to access Samsung Ads in any way that they deem appropriate. It could be a managed service, it could be through a demand-side platform into a supply-side platform where your inventory is being surfaced. Okay, so that is correct, isn't it?
That's correct. And I think more often than not, you will know this, but more often than not, it is going to that automated function. It's a lot of our supply is actually sold programmatically now, but yet some of the best relationships we got are ones where it's direct.
Yeah, of course. And when it comes to functionality of CTV advertising, again, everything's being delivered via the household IP. There's a lot of first-party data that those on the buy side can access. Are we seeing more interactivity being built into CTV ads and shoppable elements? Is that something you think that we'll see more of in the future?
I think you're seeing more of that coming. I think it's still quite nascent. I think the best way to get advertisers on, first of all, is keep it really simple. You've got your 30-second commercial that you're running on linear. Why don't you run it into another environment, but in a really cost-effective way? So you'll go, all of those CVs have seen your ad already. We'll exclude those, so we're purely an incremental reach play.
Yep.
I think where it's going, the next iteration is going to be more interactivity, more shoppability, but we're still quite nascent. So we're still, we've got some sort of our lovely competitor colleagues here. They'll be going through exactly the same challenge as us. It's actually finding those brands that want to extend the reach of their TV campaigns. And I think then the next iteration will be more interactivity.
Okay, fair enough. And we've already touched upon measurement briefly, but at a high level, lots of people are discussing at the moment in the industry as to whether or not audience measurement should be panel-based, because that's the way that traditional TV has worked for a number of years, or should it be impression measured, because, again, TV is increasingly being delivered via the household IP. Where do you think we net out on that debate, Andy? Will it be a hybrid of both, or, I mean, how do you think about that debate?
My take on that, rather than Samsung's. I think it's obvious that viewing is going into that IP environment. So it's becoming far more based on impressions. Yeah. We have the gold standard of TV measurement right now with Barb. I don't think that's going anywhere. And I think it's more realistic for new data entrants like ourselves to see how we can help and enhance those existing data sets rather than replacing them. We've got no interest in doing that. Yeah. But our message to our clients is, this is how traditional TV is doing. Use this data to enhance your overall view of your audiences. So a big part of the story is, yes, incremental reach on your linear, but wouldn't it be interesting to know more about those audiences that you did not reach through those traditional channels? That makes sense. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then in regard to the different types of CTV environments, Ed was talking about, you have SVOD, you have FAST, you have AVOD, you've got TVOD, so many acronyms. Am I right in understanding that Samsung TV Plus is a FAST channel? Is that so? If it, first of all, can you just explain what FAST means, and then also, why is everyone getting so excited about the concept of FAST? How does it differ from AVOD, and what are the opportunities for advertisers in that environment? Let's not overcomplicate it. We in the media industry call it FAST. The viewer does not. They do not sit down and say, "I fancy a bit of FAST tonight," keeping it clean. They just want great content at their fingertips, right? So. Yes, Samsung has its own collection of channels that's native and inbuilt into their TV. So we've gone from, when we first launched it nearly 5 years ago, from about 20 channels to over 190 channels. But it's not a numbers game. It's about quality content, quality environments that viewers are accessing. And the secret really is making that content available and well known to the audience and making it very easy to access. The reality is, yes, it's a fast service, so free ad-supported streaming TV. Think linear, but delivered over the internet. That's all it is. It's scheduled content. However, this is where we get in a real muddle. So you might be watching Talk TV. You press down because you missed the start of that program. You might select a previous bit of content from Talk TV on that channel. That's a VOD environment. That's video on demand. Doesn't matter. It's just bringing the content to the viewer at the moment they want to watch it. Well, let's just work out the acronyms and how to categorize it in the future. It doesn't matter. No, fair enough. And I think that's really helpful, right? Because, again, if you go to CTV panels or you're working in a space, you're going to hear those acronyms quite a lot at the moment. Changing gears a little, what about the different types of advertisers? We touched upon it earlier. Again, the majority of TV content is being delivered via the household IP. Traditionally, television or broadcasters have appealed to upper funnel, big brand building. Yes, there's been direct response, lots of insurance ads and other, call this number for a particular service. But do you think we'll see more performance-orientated advertisers in streaming? And if the answer is yes, how might attribution work? Will it all be QR-based? Because that feels like where we're at today, and it works very well, but is that the future of performance and attribution in CTV? Yeah, so some of the longest partnerships we've got with advertisers are those app partners who promote their content on the home screen, so the Disney Plus, the Paramounts, etc. They've been advertising a lot with us for the last 4 or 5 years. That is pure performance marketing now. We don't give a QBR to them, which is all, oh, you could try this, you could test this. No, it's a spreadsheet. It's all about cost per engagement, cost per dwell time, cost per acquisition. It's all cost. So it's and we are stacked up against our competitive set. And if you're performing a good ROI, they'll spend more with you. If not, but for other advertisers in the more of the kind of the audience extension model, we're still early days. So it's still impressions and it's still reach. But the more measurement partners you can apply to each buy, the more measurable it's going to be,
Okay.
the more sort of, the more performance-driven it's going to be.
Fair enough.
That's what's coming. We definitely see that a lot now.
Because there's going to be a bunch of local advertisers, social advertisers that historically haven't advertised in television before because of the barrier around building creatives or the cost per entry. But as the fast environment grows with inventory liquidity and the addressable ecosystem that they can actually deliver their ads into, I think we'll see a lot of those advertisers that are on the sidelines of CTV today and move in. But to your point, Andy, right, you need to have attribution in place. They need to be able to quantify that CTV delivers something tangible above and beyond search or above and beyond social, for instance.
And a word we haven't used yet is consent. So none of this would be measurable unless you've got the explicit consent of each device owner. Until we launched a CMP, consent management platform, a couple of years ago, until we had that reassurance that we had asked our customer a number of times throughout the year, until we had that reliability, we didn't explore any of this measurement. Now that's in place, now that's kind of gold standard. Now we're onboarding different measurement partners.
Perfect, and that's really interesting to hear. I actually have a Samsung TV, and if you don't, when you turn that on, when you go into a streaming service, there is actually a notification that asks if you're happy for your data to be used to help inform the advertising process. And to your point, the more of that the OEMs can harness in a privacy-compliant way, the more they can make their inventory addressable at scale, right?
And that's that's what you have to do as an OEM. Right, back to that manufacturer. Being in the device itself, our customer is not just the viewer of that screen. Our customer has forked out a lot of money for a lovely device. That is the relationship that is sacrosanct to us. So we'll quite often be a lot slower with measurement solutions, as long as we know that we're looking after that customer.
Absolutely. It's the most important thing. Without consent and notification, it's very hard to implement a lot of the data-driven strategies that we all talk about in the industry. Right, I can see Ben waving at me, 5 minutes.
He's loving this chat, that's why.
I know. Right, a few quick questions. I want to ask, what would you recommend to agencies or brands when they're considering advertising in CTV? There's a whole multitude of different services at the moment, launching from the US into Europe. So it can be quite a confusing inventory landscape to navigate. What kind of top tips would you recommend to a brand or agency?
I saw a brilliant bit of work by Ubiquity. Now, I wouldn't normally promote auditors because they're scary, but they're absolutely right in saying to invest in connected TV, to invest in video, there are some real safeguards you've got to put in place. You've got to interrogate the scale. You've got to interrogate the performance of the media. You've got to interrogate the media quality, and you've got to interrogate the measurement. As long as you know what you're buying and who you're buying it from, you won't go wrong. It's because it's a fantastic area that's evolving. But just put those really sensible sort of guardrails in place. And I think what TV is doing well, and I do mean total TV, it's not making the mistakes that digital rushed into. So yes, things have gone a bit slower, but I think for the right reasons, because that cautious approach means that fraud is very limited. It's brand safe environment.
You're absolutely right. And I'm often asked why I'm so passionate about this space. And for me, it's the sight, sound and motion of television, but increasingly with the precision of digital advertising. And I think that creates a very unique environment for advertisers. So, Andy, that's been a great conversation. Thank you for sharing some insights around what you're doing at Samsung Ads and the evolution of TV OEMs and the role that they're playing in CTV advertising. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks very much.